The rain had been falling over Manhattan since sunset, the kind of cold, steady rain that blurred the lights on Fifth Avenue and made the whole city feel like it was holding its breath. Inside the penthouse on the 52nd floor, Sarah Ward stood alone in the entryway, one hand pressed against her lower back, the other resting gently over her stomach. Her breath trembled. The doctor had told her stress could harm the baby, but how could she calm herself when the life she built was cracking apart? She slowly looked around the quiet apartment, its marble floors, the framed black and white photos on the walls, the soft hum of the air system, and realized none of it felt like home anymore. Not after what she had seen on Ethan's phone. Not after the lies that had unraveled everything. Her suitcase sat by the door. It wasn't even fully packed. She had only taken what she needed. A few clothes, her purse, her prenatal vitamins, and the small silver necklace her mother gave her before she passed. Her iPhone still showed the unread text she had typed but never sent. "I can't do this anymore." She deleted it. She refused to explain. She refused to plead. She refused to give Ethan a chance to twist her pain into an argument he could win. She reached for the doorknob, but stopped when a sudden kick came from inside her belly, strong, surprising, almost like the baby was warning her to be careful. Sarah closed her eyes and whispered, "I'm doing this for us. I promise." The rain outside grew louder, tapping against the tall windows like impatient fingers. She pulled up her hood, wrapped her coat around her belly, and stepped into the hallway without looking back. Downstairs, the lobby glowed with warm light. The concierge lifted his head, surprised to see Mrs. Ward out alone at this late hour, but Sarah kept walking without a word. The revolving doors spun slowly, releasing her into the cold street where taxis splashed through puddles and umbrellas bobbed through the night. She blended into the city, as if she were just another shadow running from something too heavy to bear. 40 minutes later, Ethan Ward returned home. His Mercedes pulled into the private garage, and he walked toward the elevator with the same distracted, exhausted stride he'd had for weeks. A board meeting at the Park Avenue Tower had stretched late again, and he hadn't even bothered to remove his Mont Blanc pen clipped to his jacket pocket. But as soon as the penthouse doors opened and the silence hit him, something felt wrong. Sarah was always home at this hour. She always left the hallway light on for him. Tonight it was dark. He called her name. No answer. He moved deeper into the apartment, noticing the missing suitcase, the open drawer, the faint perfume she used lingering in the air like a fading goodbye. His heartbeat quickened. He dialed her number, straight to voicemail. He searched every room, every corner, calling again and again. Nothing. On the kitchen counter lay her wedding ring, small and cold, and next to it, a pair of baby socks she had bought last week. Ethan pressed both hands against the counter to steady himself, but his knees weakened anyway. A feeling he had never known, not in business, not in life, rose in his chest. A crushing, breath-stealing panic. His wife was gone. His unborn child was gone, and he had no idea where they went or why they left without a word. And then he saw the security camera alert glowing on his phone, showing exactly what time Sarah walked out into the storm. The moment Ethan saw the security alert on his phone, his breath stalled in his chest. The short clip showed Sarah stepping into the hallway with her hood pulled low, her steps slow, one hand steadying her belly. She didn't look angry. She didn't look rushed. She looked defeated. That image hit him harder than any corporate crisis ever had. He replayed the clip again and again, each time feeling something heavy tighten around his ribs until breathing became a conscious effort. He dropped onto the nearest chair, running a hand through his damp hair. The penthouse suddenly felt enormous, too quiet, too clean, like a showpiece nobody lived in. The rain hammered louder against the windows, as if the sky was echoing the storm inside his chest. He tried to think clearly, to piece together what could have driven her away. She had seemed tired lately. Yes, more withdrawn, but he assumed it was the pregnancy. He hadn't even considered she was hurting in ways he didn't see, and that realization stung with a sharpness he hadn't expected. His phone buzzed again, a message from Olivia. "Are you home yet? I'm nearby. Thought we could talk." He stared at the screen, disgust rising in him. He didn't respond. Instead, he shut off the phone completely and stood up, pacing. The more he walked, the more frantic his thoughts became. He should call security, or the police, or her doctor. Something, anything. He grabbed his MacBook from the counter, opened the tracking apps, searched for her last credit card use. Nothing since late afternoon. No Uber receipts, no calls, no messages. It was as if she had deliberately erased her trail. He felt the tremor in his hands before he noticed he was shaking. He moved to the bar cart, poured himself a drink, but set it down untouched. His chest hurt too much to swallow anything. He leaned forward, pressing both palms on the cool marble surface, forcing his body to stay upright. Memories of Sarah flickered through his mind, her soft laugh, the way she covered her mouth when she cried during movies, the way she placed his hand on her belly so he could feel the baby's tiny kicks. He had missed all of that lately, buried under meetings, travel, pressure, and distractions he never should have allowed into his life. Especially Olivia. For the first time, he realized just how badly he had neglected the woman who had stood by him before the money, before the headlines, before the luxury. Sarah wasn't the type to cause scenes. If she left, she was hurt in a way he hadn't bothered to see. That truth cracked something inside him. He grabbed his coat and headed to the elevator. In the lobby, the concierge approached cautiously. "Mr. Ward, your wife left about an hour ago. She seemed upset." Ethan swallowed hard. "Do you know where she went?" The concierge shook his head apologetically. Outside, Manhattan glistened with rain-soaked lights. Ethan stepped onto the sidewalk and looked each direction, as if Sarah might still be there, standing beneath a street lamp or waiting by a passing taxi. But the city swallowed people quickly, and she was already gone. He pulled his coat tighter, his mind spinning. He needed to find her. He needed to fix what he broke. He needed to protect his child. But he had no starting point, no message, no clue. Only the image of Sarah walking away like a woman who had lost every last ounce of strength. And suddenly, for the first time in his life, the billionaire felt truly powerless. He didn't know it yet, but someone was already whispering lies about Sarah's disappearance, and those lies were about to spread farther than he could control. Before the spotlight, before the private jets, before the boardrooms with glass walls overlooking Park Avenue, Ethan and Sarah had been just another young couple trying to build a quiet life. They met at a small community college in Ohio, where Sarah studied early childhood development and Ethan studied computer engineering. He had nothing back then, no company, no investors, no headlines, but he had drive. What drew Sarah to him wasn't ambition. It was the softness he hid beneath it. She loved that he listened when she spoke, that he held her hand like something delicate and precious. For a long time, that gentleness made her feel safe. But when Ethan launched his tech startup, everything began shifting faster than either of them could keep up. The first major investment came, then the second, then the third. With each success, their world grew bigger, brighter, louder. Suddenly, they were living in Manhattan, surrounded by people who saw Ethan not as a man but as a brand. The more attention he gained, the more he pulled away from her. It wasn't intentional, not at first. He was buried under pressure, expectations, and the intoxicating rhythm of success. Sarah told herself it was temporary, that once things settled, he'd return to the man she knew. But the distance only grew. She stopped mentioning the little things she noticed: his late nights, the canceled dinners, the messages he guarded too quickly. She told herself not to seem clingy, not to get in the way. When she learned she was pregnant, she hoped the news would pull them closer. Instead, Ethan congratulated her with a distracted smile before returning to his MacBook, tapping away at a deal he insisted couldn't wait. That night, she cried silently beside him while he slept, her hands folded over her stomach as if shielding their child from the loneliness creeping into the room. Things got worse when Olivia appeared. She was everything the Manhattan scene admired: sharp, polished, effortlessly confident. She worked in PR, the kind who knew exactly what to say and exactly how to stand while saying it. At first, Sarah tried to welcome her, believing Olivia was simply part of the corporate expansion. But then came the subtle shifts. Olivia showing up at late meetings that didn't require her. Olivia laughing a little too easily at Ethan's jokes. Olivia sending messages at hours no colleague should. Sarah tried to ignore the signs, but truth has a cruel way of exposing itself. The moment everything shattered came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Sarah was folding baby onesies in the nursery when she heard Ethan's phone buzz on the dresser. She didn't mean to look. Her eyes simply drifted, almost by instinct. The preview on the screen showed Olivia's name and a message that froze her breath. "I can't stop thinking about last night." Sarah touched the phone with trembling fingers, opening the message thread. Messages stacked one after another. Flirtation, arrangements, secrets whispered through text. Her knees buckled. She sat on the edge of the bed, pressing both hands to her stomach as her heart cracked open. That night, Ethan came home late again, smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't his. Sarah didn't yell. She didn't confront him. She simply watched him move through the penthouse with the ease of a man who believed everything was in his control. Something shifted inside her then, a quiet, devastating realization that she had become invisible in her own marriage. And as she stood in the nursery staring at the life she carried, she understood that staying silent would destroy her faster than leaving. The bus hissed as it came to a stop in the small Pennsylvania town, its headlights cutting through the misty dawn that settled over the quiet streets. Sarah rose slowly from her seat, one hand pressed to her lower back, the other steadying her belly as she stepped into the aisle. Her legs felt weak after the long overnight ride from Manhattan, but the cool morning air that rushed in when the doors opened felt like something close to relief. She didn't know exactly where she was or what she would do next. She only knew she couldn't go back. Not now, not after everything. The town wasn't much, just a main street lined with old brick buildings, a diner with flickering neon lights, a hardware store that looked older than she was. It was the kind of place where people greeted strangers and moved at a pace slow enough for the heart to breathe. Sarah tightened her coat around her belly and stepped onto the sidewalk, letting the silence calm her racing thoughts. The contrast to the Manhattan skyline was sharp. Here, there were no honking taxis, no crowds, no shadows of skyscrapers pressing down, only the soft hum of early morning and the distant smell of fresh coffee drifting from somewhere down the road. She walked carefully until she spotted a small, weathered sign, "Room and Rest In, Weekly Rates." It wasn't luxurious, but luxury wasn't what she needed. Safety was. She pushed open the door, and a bell chimed overhead. A woman in her late 60s looked up from behind the counter, her eyes gentle but alert. "Morning, sweetheart," the woman said. "You look like you've had a long night." Sarah offered a tired smile. "I just need a room. For a few days, maybe longer." The woman nodded as if she understood more than Sarah said. "We've got a vacancy." "Name?" "Sarah Ward." The name felt heavy leaving her mouth. The woman handed her a key. "Breakfast is at 7. Try to rest, honey." The room was small, a single bed, a wooden chair, a chipped dresser, but it was quiet, safe. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, breathing carefully. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself to break. The tears came without sound, rolling steadily down her cheeks as she held her stomach protectively. "I'm sorry," she whispered to her unborn child. "I'm sorry we had to leave like that, but we're going to be okay. I promise we will be okay." After resting, she wandered through town, needing air, needing something to anchor herself. She passed a cafe with warm lights glowing against the gray morning. A chalkboard sign read, "Lucas's Coffee House Homemade Pastries. Fresh, brew daily." Through the window she saw a few locals chatting, and a man behind the counter wiping down tables. Something about the simplicity of it, the normalcy, pulled her in. She ordered a herbal tea, her hands shaking slightly as she reached for her wallet. The man behind the counter, tall with kind eyes and a calm presence, noticed. "You travelin' alone?" he asked gently. Sarah hesitated before nodding. "Just needed to get away." He didn't press. "Well, you're safe here. If you need anything extra tea, a seat near the heater, just say the word." His kindness almost brought her to tears again. She sipped her tea slowly, feeling warmth spread through her chest. For the first time since leaving Manhattan, she felt the faintest flicker of peace. As she stepped back outside, a cold breeze brushed her cheek. She pulled her coat tighter and walked slowly toward the inn, unaware that her disappearance was already stirring chaos back in the city. And she didn't know that someone in Manhattan had already begun twisting her absence into a story far uglier than the truth. Olivia Reed stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting the diamond earring she had borrowed from a stylist who believed she was practically Mrs. Ward already. The thought made her smile. For weeks, she had waited for this moment, the quiet disappearance of Sarah Ward, the pregnant wife who had always seemed too soft, too gentle, too unfit for the sharp world Ethan lived in now. Olivia believed she was the better match, the one who understood power, image, and the demands of New York's elite circles. In her mind, Ethan simply needed time to accept it. She smoothed her red lipstick and practiced the smile she would use when reporters asked about her relationship with Ethan. She imagined the headlines. She imagined the whispers. She imagined stepping into the gala beside him, wearing a couture gown that shimmered under the chandeliers. Everything felt so close, so reachable, as if the universe had finally cleared the path for her. But reality didn't match her fantasy. When she texted Ethan that morning, he didn't answer. She tried again. No response. She called him. Straight to voicemail. She frowned, pacing her apartment, heels clicking sharply on the polished hardwood floor. He had been distant since Sarah vanished, but Olivia told herself it was temporary, just shock. He would come around. He had to come around. She checked social media, searching for any mention of Sarah. Nothing concrete yet, just speculations. Some gossip pages whispered that Sarah had gone to visit family. Others claimed she was overwhelmed by pregnancy. Olivia smirked. She knew the truth, or at least what she believed was the truth. Sarah had finally realized she couldn't compete with everything Olivia offered. Still, something felt off. Later that afternoon, Olivia arrived at the company tower, stepping out of her Uber with the confidence of someone who believed she belonged on every exclusive list. She entered the lobby, expecting security to greet her warmly the way they often did. This time, no one smiled. They only nodded stiffly before returning to their work. She brushed it off and headed to the elevator. The moment she stepped onto Ethan's floor, she sensed tension. Employees whispered as she passed. Doors closed faster than usual. Even Ethan's assistant avoided eye contact. She knocked on his office door and pushed it open slightly. "Ethan?" "I thought we could." He didn't even look up. His hair was a mess. His shirt wrinkled. His usually composed presence shattered. Papers were scattered across the desk, and his MacBook sat open with search tabs filled with Sarah's name, hospital records, flight manifests, security logs. Olivia's breath hitched. "Ethan," she said softly, "you look exhausted. Maybe you should rest." He slammed his laptop shut. "Did you know Sarah left town?" Olivia froze. "I heard rumors." He finally looked at her, and the coldness in his eyes made her chest tighten. "She's pregnant. And alone. And missing. Do you think this is a game?" Olivia opened her mouth but couldn't form a single convincing word. She had never seen him like this, shaken, frantic, vulnerable. This wasn't the man she planned to win over. This was a man who was breaking. "Ethan, I care about you," she tried. "I just want what's best." "What's best," he said sharply, "is finding my wife." Olivia stepped back, stunned. She had expected jealousy, anger, resentment. She had not expected sorrow. She had not expected loyalty. She had not expected Ethan to crumble without Sarah. She left the office quietly, her heels suddenly feeling too loud, her confidence dissolving into dread, because for the first time, she realized something terrifying. If Sarah returned even for a single day, Olivia's fragile victory would fall apart before her eyes. The morning after Sarah arrived in the small Pennsylvania town, the air carried a quiet chill, the kind that reminded her winter would come soon. She wrapped her scarf gently around her neck and walked slowly toward the clinic the innkeeper had recommended. The sign above the door read Riverside Medical Center, an old brick building with ivy climbing its walls. It didn't look modern or impressive, but something about it felt steady, like a place where people actually cared. Inside, the lobby was warm, smelling faintly of antiseptic and coffee. Sarah approached the reception desk, her hands nervously clasped over her belly. She didn't want to draw attention, but she knew she needed a checkup. The stress of the last 24 hours had left her lightheaded, and the baby's kicks had been softer than usual. Before she could speak, a calm voice interrupted. "Are you all right, dear?" Sarah turned to see a woman in her mid-50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled into a low bun and eyes that held both kindness and depth. She wore a white coat with a simple name tag, Dr. Helen Brooks. I'm okay," Sarah said softly, though she knew she wasn't. "I just need to make sure my baby's fine." Helen studied her for a moment, reading the exhaustion on her face the way only someone who had lived through their own storms could. "Come with me," she said gently. "We'll take a look." In the exam room, Sarah lay on the table while Helen moved the ultrasound wand across her stomach. The dark screen flickered, then filled with small movements, tiny, steady, rhythmic. Sarah exhaled a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Your baby is strong," Helen said with a warm smile. "Stronger than you think." Tears pricked at the corner of Sarah's eyes. "I've been under a lot of stress." "I can see that," Helen said softly. "And usually, when a woman looks the way you do, eyes too tired, voice too quiet, she isn't running from something small. She's running from something that broke her heart." Sarah blinked, startled. "I can't talk about it." Helen pulled up a chair. "You don't have to. But you should know this clinic is a safe place, and this town, it's the kind where people look out for each other." There was something in Helen's voice, steady, grounded, that felt like a hand reaching through the fog Sarah had been trapped in. She didn't know why she trusted her, only that she did. When the appointment ended, Sarah tried to pay, but Helen waved her off. "You focus on getting some rest. We'll figure the rest out later." Outside, the wind brushed her cheeks, but she felt steadier than before. She returned to the inn, sat on the bed, and allowed herself a moment to breathe. For the first time since leaving Manhattan, she felt like she wasn't carrying her burden alone. A few hours later, there was a gentle knock on her door. When she opened it, she found Helen standing there with a small paper bag. "I thought you might need this," Helen said. Inside were prenatal vitamins, crackers for nausea, and a warm container of vegetable soup. "Eat something. And remember, you're not alone, Sarah." Before leaving, Helen paused. "You remind me of someone I once knew. Someone who also left a life that no longer protected her. She rebuilt herself piece by piece. You will too." As the door closed, Sarah held the soup in her hands, warmth spreading through her palms and her chest. She didn't know Helen's story, but she sensed a quiet strength behind her words. And for the first time since stepping onto that bus, Sarah felt the faint beginning of hope, fragile but real. What she didn't know was that Helen's support would become the one force strong enough to pull her back into the light when her past finally caught up to her. Ethan hadn't slept more than an hour since Sarah disappeared. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her walking into that stormy Manhattan night, small, fragile, alone, carrying their child. Guilt gnawed at him like an animal. Even in the boardroom, he couldn't focus. His mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. By the third day, the dark circles under his eyes made him look like a stranger. At sunrise, he returned to the security office of their building. The head of security, a former NYPD officer named Grant, replayed footage from every angle: lobby, elevators, garage. Sarah appeared in each clip like a ghost, passing through the edges of Ethan's life, unnoticed until it was too late. She walked calmly, without hesitation. No one followed her. No one stopped her. She simply disappeared into the rain. "Mr. Ward," Grant said carefully, "she didn't use a car from our building. She walked. We're checking traffic cams now." "Check every one of them," Ethan replied, voice low and tight. "Every street, every taxi plate, every bus that passed within a block." He wasn't a man accustomed to asking for help, but desperation had stripped away his pride. He contacted private investigators, hired digital forensics specialists, reached out to every hospital within 100 miles. He combed bank statements, credit card activity, health insurance logs. Nothing. It was as if Sarah had intentionally erased her trail. In a moment of panic, he tried calling her parents, though he knew they'd passed years earlier. He even drove to the old apartment they once shared in Ohio, walking the hallways like a man searching for a version of himself he could barely remember. On the fourth day, Olivia showed up at his penthouse without warning. He heard the knock, but ignored it until she let herself in with the spare code he'd never bothered to change. "Ethan," she said gently, "you can't keep doing this to yourself." He didn't answer. He stood in the living room surrounded by stacks of printed maps, lists of transit routes, screenshots of traffic camera stills. When he finally looked up, his expression was hollow. "Why are you here, Olivia?" "I care about you," she said softly, stepping closer. "I want to help." But he stepped back, shaking his head. "No, you don't understand. None of this matters. Not the company, not the board, not the gala, not you. Sarah is missing. My wife, the mother of my child." Her jaw tightened, but she forced her face into a sympathetic mask. "Maybe she just needed space. Maybe she'll come back." "She left without her prenatal supplements," he said, holding the half-open bottle like evidence in a criminal case. "She didn't take her blood pressure monitor. She didn't take the baby's medical file. This wasn't a planned trip." He sank into a chair, hands covering his face. His voice cracked. "I failed her." Olivia watched him with a mix of jealousy and resentment, emotions she'd never admit out loud. For months she had imagined Ethan leaving Sarah for her. She never imagined he'd fall apart because Sarah was gone. When she reached out to touch his shoulder, he flinched away. "Go home, Olivia," he said quietly. "Please." Something cold settled in her chest. She realized the truth she'd refused to see. Ethan's heart had never belonged to her. Not even a little. Later that night, Ethan received a call from Grant. "Sir, we found something on one of the bus station cameras." Ethan's heart stopped. Grant continued, "It's her. She bought a ticket. Alone." Ethan grabbed his keys, adrenaline surging, because if he could trace that bus, maybe, just maybe, he was finally close to finding the woman whose absence was tearing him apart. Sarah woke before sunrise, the dim orange light slipping through the thin curtains of her small inn-room. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then the quiet, not the Manhattan kind of quiet, filled with distant horns and elevator hums, but real quiet reminded her. Pennsylvania, safety, distance. She placed a hand over her belly and whispered, "We're okay," as if saying it out loud would make it truer. After everything she had endured, she knew she needed to build something stronger inside herself, something no betrayal could break. She showered slowly, letting the warm water wash away the emotional weight still clinging to her skin. When she caught her reflection in the mirror, she saw the exhaustion, but also something else, something steadier than before. She braided her hair loosely, put on the thick sweater she'd bought at the thrift shop down the street, and stepped outside. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of wood smoke from nearby houses. She pulled her coat around her belly and walked toward Lucas's coffee house, needing warmth, needing routine, needing a moment that didn't hurt. When she entered the cafe, Lucas looked up from behind the counter. "Morning, Sarah," he said with that easy calmness she'd grown to appreciate. "You're up early." "The baby woke me," she said, smiling shyly. "Then the baby clearly wants breakfast." He handed her a warm mug of chamomile tea and a small plate of toast. "On the house." She blinked. "Lucas, you really don't have to." "I know," he said simply, "but sometimes people need help. Doesn't make them weak." The words hit deeper than he knew. Sarah sat by the window, watching the slow haze of morning spread across the street. For the first time in weeks, she felt her shoulders loosen. She didn't have to pretend here. She didn't have to smile through pain or hide her fears. She could just exist quietly, softly, freely. After breakfast, she walked to the clinic for her follow-up appointment. Helen greeted her with a warm nod, her presence steady as always. "You're looking better today." "I feel better today," Sarah admitted. They spent the next hour talking not just about the pregnancy, but about life, loss, and the kind of strength women rarely give themselves credit for. Helen listened without judgment, offering gentle truths wrapped in compassion. Sarah found herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected. "I thought leaving would break me," Sarah said softly. "But staying was already breaking me." Helen touched her hand. "Sometimes survival looks like running. Sometimes healing begins with distance. What matters is that you're choosing yourself now." After the appointment, Sarah wandered through the small-town library. She picked up a used copy of Women Who Run with the Wolves and felt something stir inside her, something like courage. She sat in a corner chair, reading slowly, letting the words sink in. The book wasn't magic, but it was a reminder she wasn't the only woman who had ever been betrayed, abandoned, or overlooked. Others had clawed their way back into the light. She could too. When she returned to the inn, she felt different, more grounded, more aware of her own strength. She sat on the bed, opened her notebook, and began writing letters to her unborn child. "You deserve a mother who knows her worth," she wrote. "And I'm trying, baby. I really am." Her handwriting shook, but her resolve didn't. Because for the first time since her world shattered, Sarah wasn't just running from something. She was slowly, quietly, beginning to run toward the woman she was meant to become. And she didn't realize yet that soon, her newfound strength would collide headfirst with the chaos waiting for her back in Manhattan. Olivia paced across her luxury apartment, her heels tapping against the polished marble like impatient warnings. For days she'd watched Ethan spiral, cancel meetings, skip calls, ignore the gala planning he once micromanaged. He was falling apart, and in her mind, that made him vulnerable. Vulnerable men made desperate choices. Desperate choices could be steered. She just needed the right push. She took a long sip of iced coffee, opened her laptop, and pulled up the folder she'd been collecting for weeks. Screenshots, drafted statements, edited photos. She didn't consider it manipulation. In her mind, it was strategy. If Sarah refused to step aside, then Olivia would simply force her out of the picture socially, publicly, irrevocably. She typed quickly, her fingers moving with sharp purpose. A crafted email, a rumor designed to spread like wildfire. A narrative that painted Sarah as unstable, overwhelmed, and possibly involved with someone else. "People believe what scares them," Olivia whispered to herself. "And people are always scared of a woman who breaks the perfect image." She forwarded the file to a gossip columnist she had worked with in the past, someone who owed her favors. Within an hour, the first headline appeared on a mid-tier tabloid site. Sources say billionaire's wife disappears after secret lover spotted in Manhattan. It was a lie, of course, a cruel one, but Olivia didn't flinch. In her world, perception mattered more than truth. The story spread faster than she expected. Social media accounts amplified it. Comment sections exploded. By afternoon, a second article appeared, questioning Sarah's mental state. Olivia watched it unfold from her couch, legs crossed, sipping wine as if observing a game she had already won. But her victory was short-lived. At headquarters, the communications director, a woman named Rachel, fiercely loyal to Ethan, had been monitoring the news cycle. When she saw the sudden swarm of stories about Sarah, she felt her stomach drop. She knew how these narratives started. They didn't appear from nowhere. Someone fed them. She traced the digital breadcrumb trail from the gossip site to a private email. The address wasn't Olivia's name outright, but Rachel recognized the pattern. She'd seen it before in leaked brand pitches and manipulative PR pushes Olivia had orchestrated months earlier. Rachel stormed into Ethan's office without knocking. "Where is she?" Ethan asked immediately, hopeful eyes lifting. Rachel shook her head. "No updates on Sarah, but you need to see this." She dropped a stack of printed articles onto his desk. Ethan's face drained of color as he skimmed the headlines. "This is garbage. None of this is true. Who would?" Rachel placed another paper on top, a printout of the anonymous email sent to the journalist. "Look at the writing style," she said. "Look at the signature structure. This wasn't random." She hesitated, then added quietly, "It was Olivia." Ethan's jaw tensed so tightly, his neck muscles strained. The betrayal stunned him. He had known Olivia could be ambitious, manipulative, even but this, attacking Sarah while she was pregnant and missing, endangering her reputation for personal gain. He stood abruptly, knocking over his water glass. Find security. Olivia Reed is to be removed from the building. Effective, immediately. Rachel nodded and left. Ethan grabbed his phone and paced, anger and fear twisting inside him. He didn't care about damage control. He didn't care about the company or public opinion. What shattered him was the idea of Sarah, alone somewhere, possibly seeing these lies, believing he was behind them. Meanwhile, across the city, Olivia received a call from her columnist. "Your story's blowing up, congrats," he said with a mocking tone. But before she could respond, her apartment buzzer sounded. Security. Herr Stomach sank. She wasn't being congratulated. She was being escorted out of Ethan's world. And as the elevator doors closed in front of her, Olivia finally realized that her lies had done more than smear Sarah. They had awakened a fury in Ethan she had never seen before. The moment security escorted Olivia out of the building, Ethan felt a boiling mix of fury and disgust thrum beneath his skin. It wasn't just betrayal, it was violation. Olivia had attacked Sarah when she was most vulnerable. She had fed the world lies about the woman carrying his child. And worst of all, he had allowed Olivia into his life long enough to cause this destruction. He stormed out of his office, ignoring the startled glances from employees. The elevator ride to the lobby felt endless. When the doors opened, he saw Olivia standing near the revolving doors, her arms crossed defensively as two security officers waited beside her. "Ethan," she snapped, lifting her chin. "Is this really necessary? You're humiliating me." He approached slowly, each step deliberate, his expression carved from stone. "You humiliated yourself," he said coldly. "And you put my wife at risk." Olivia scoffed. "Oh, please." Sarah ran away. "She left you. She can't handle your world. I was doing you a favor." "A favor?" His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You called my pregnant wife unstable. You invented a fake lover. You pushed headlines that could destroy her reputation. She abandoned you," Olivia shouted, desperate. "You think she deserves sympathy? She left you to clean up the mess. Enough." His voice cracked like a whip. "Sarah left because of me. Because I failed her. Because I let someone like you close enough to hurt her." Olivia flinched. Ethan continued, voice low and raw. "But make no mistake, you had no right to create lies about her. You had no right to weaponize the press against a woman who has done nothing but live quietly and love deeply." For a moment, Olivia's mask slipped. Her eyes narrowed, icy and sharp. "If she comes back," she said bitterly, "she'll ruin everything you've built. She'll make you small again. You think she belongs in your world? She's weak." Ethan felt something in him snap. "Sarah is the strongest person I've ever known." The lobby fell silent. Even the security guards froze. He stepped closer until Olivia had no choice but to look directly into the rage she had unleashed. "You are here because I allowed you to be," he said. "But Sarah? Sarah built the man I once was, the man I still want to be. She stood by me before the money, before the headlines, before the greed." Olivia swallowed hard, her confidence draining. "Ethan, listen. I can fix this. I can issue new statements. I can spin the story back your way. I don't want you to fix anything," he said, stepping back. "I want you out, of my company, of my life." One of the guards gestured toward the exit. Olivia's breathing turned sharp, panicked. "This isn't over," she said shakily. "You'll regret choosing her over me. Everyone will see what she truly is." "You're wrong," Ethan replied. "The only one people will see clearly now is you." She didn't have a comeback, not one that mattered. The guards guided her toward the doors, and Olivia stepped into the rainy street, her heels splashing into a shallow puddle as the glass closed behind her. For a moment, Ethan remained still, staring at the door she had just exited through. His chest rose and fell in uneven breaths. He wasn't proud of the chaos surrounding him. He wasn't proud of his mistakes, but he was done letting people excuse them. He was done hiding behind work and pressure and success. He had failed Sarah. He wouldn't fail her again. He returned to his office, grabbed his coat, and called Grant. "Send me the bus station clips again," he said. "This time, I won't stop searching until I find her." Grant hesitated. "Sir, the footage suggests she traveled out of state." "I don't care if she crossed the country," Ethan said. "I'm going after her." As he stepped into the elevator, determination hardened into something unbreakable. Because now Ethan wasn't just searching for Sarah, he was fighting for the soul she once believed he still had. Sarah returned to Lucas's coffee house late in the afternoon, drawn by the familiar warmth drifting through its windows. The sky outside had shifted into soft shades of gold, the kind that made small towns feel like they held secrets gently, instead of burying them like big cities did. She pulled open the door, a small bell chiming overhead, and immediately felt the heat soothe the cold on her cheeks. Lucas looked up from the espresso machine. "Back again," he said with an easy smile. "That's a good sign." Sarah let out a shy laugh. "Your tea helped." And the quiet helped even more. "Sit wherever you want," he said. "I'll bring you something warm." She settled into a corner booth where she could see the main street through the window. Kids on bicycles rode past, and an older couple held hands while walking a tiny dog. It was the kind of scene she used to imagine when her life felt too overwhelming. Peaceful, slow, safe. Lucas approached with a cup of warm honey tea and a small plate of apple slices. "Good for blood sugar," he said, setting them down. "And better than the cookies you wanted yesterday." Sarah grinned. "You remembered?" "I tend to remember things," he said lightly. "Helps when you run a business." She sipped her tea, letting the sweetness settle in her chest. For a moment, neither spoke. It wasn't awkward, it was comfortable, like silence between two people who didn't need to fill every second with words. Finally, Lucas pulled off his apron and sat across from her. "You don't have to answer if you don't want to," he said gently. "But are you safe?" The question surprised her, not because he asked, but because of the sincerity in his eyes. She looked down at her hands. "I'm safe," she said softly. "Just rebuilding." "That can be the hardest part," he replied. "But you're doing it." She didn't know why, but those words made her eyes sting. Maybe because no one had acknowledged her strength lately. Maybe because she barely acknowledged it herself. Lucas glanced at her belly. "How far along are you?" 7 months, she answered. "Feels like everything happened fast." "Does the father know where you are?" he asked carefully. Sarah hesitated. "No, and I don't think he deserves to." Lucas nodded slowly, understanding more than she said. "People don't leave unless they've been pushed hard," he murmured. "Sometimes leaving is the bravest thing you can do." His voice carried the quiet heaviness of someone who had lived through something difficult too. Sarah tilted her head. "You sound like you've been there." He let out a small breath. "My wife Emily passed 2 years ago. Cancer. We tried everything. But in the end, I had to walk through that grief alone." "Oh," Sarah whispered. "I'm so sorry." "It's all right," Lucas said softly. "It taught me something important, that life doesn't go in straight lines. Sometimes it breaks you open in ways you never expected. But if you're lucky, new pieces show up." Sarah looked at him then, really looked. His kindness wasn't the kind that demanded anything. It wasn't flirtation or pity. It was simply presence. And she realized how long it had been since someone had spoken to her without judgment or expectation. A sudden pressure tightened in her abdomen, making her wince. Lucas sat forward instantly. "You okay?" "Yes," she said quickly. "Just a strong kick." He exhaled in relief. "Your little one's going to be a fighter." Sarah smiled, placing a hand over her belly. "Maybe, I hope so." They talked for another hour about books, the town, simple things that didn't require emotional armor. When she finally stood to leave, Lucas walked her to the door. "If you need anything," he said, "even just company, I'm here." For a moment, Sarah stood still, touched by his sincerity. "Thank you, Lucas." As she stepped out into the cool evening, her heart felt strangely lighter. She wasn't in love, not even close, but something had shifted. She felt seen. She felt human again. And she didn't know yet that this gentle connection would soon become the lifeline she desperately needed when her past found her at last. The next morning, Sarah sat by the window of her small inn room, wrapped in a blanket as the early light filtered through the thin curtains. She had slept more soundly than she expected, soothed by the quiet hum of the radiator and the faint sense of safety she hadn't felt in months. She rubbed her belly gently, whispering to her baby about the peaceful dreams she hoped they would both have from now on. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind her. Then her phone buzzed. She froze. No one had messaged her since she left Manhattan. Her number wasn't widely shared. With trembling fingers, she picked up the phone. A notification flashed across the screen, a text from an unknown number. "Thought you should see this." Attached was a single photo. Sarah tapped it open, her heart thudding. It was Ethan and Olivia, standing far too close, Olivia's hand on his chest. Ethan's head bowed slightly, as if in a moment of intimate conversation. The angle, the lighting, the cropping, it all made the picture look far worse than the reality Sarah remembered. She had known Ethan had betrayed her emotionally. She had seen messages. But seeing an image, something the world could twist, interpret, judge, hit her harder than she expected. Her breath hitched, her vision blurred. Below the photo were links 3 gossip articles, all suggesting that Sarah had left her billionaire husband after an affair of her own, that she had been unstable during pregnancy, that Ethan was seeking comfort with someone else, Olivia. The words stabbed deeper than knives. Sarah covered her mouth to muffle a sob. She tried to breathe through the tightening in her chest, but panic rose fast, hot, suffocating. She curled forward instinctively, protecting her baby from the shock trembling through her body. A sudden knock at the door made her flinch. "Sarah, it's Helen." Sarah wiped her tears quickly and opened the door. The moment Helen saw her swollen, red-rimmed eyes, her expression softened into concern. "What happened?" Helen asked gently. Sarah handed her the phone with shaking hands. Helen's face changed, first confusion, then anger simmering just beneath the surface. "This is cruel," Helen murmured, "and intentional. Someone wanted you to see this." Sarah swallowed hard. "Why would they do this? Why now?" Her voice cracked. "I left. Isn't that enough?" "No," Helen said firmly. "Not for people who thrive on power or jealousy. Someone wants to control your story, Sarah. They want to paint you as the villain before you even get a chance to speak." Sarah's knees buckled slightly, and Helen helped her to sit on the bed. "Do you believe it?" Sarah whispered. "Do you think Ethan moved on already?" Helen took her hand. "I don't know your husband, but I know human behavior. And that photo, it was staged, set up, designed to hurt you, to provoke you." Sarah stared at the floor, trying to steady her breathing. "I don't want to go back. I can't face all of that again." "You don't have to go back," Helen assured her. "But you can't let strangers decide who you are, not for your sake and not for your baby's." A tear rolled down Sarah's cheek. "What do I do?" Helen squeezed her hand. "You stand up. Not for him. For you." Later that day, Sarah went to Lucas's cafe, seeking comfort in familiarity. When Lucas saw her walk in pale, shaken, he rushed from behind the counter. "Sarah, what happened?" She hesitated, then showed him the photo. Lucas's jaw tightened, anger flashing in his eyes. "This is garbage," he said. "Whoever sent this wanted to hurt you." Sarah nodded weakly. "I don't know how to fight something like this." Lucas gently placed a hand on the back of her chair. "Then don't fight alone." His voice was soft, but steady, something she could lean on. Sarah didn't know it yet, but this moment, the photo, the lie, the overwhelming humiliation would ignite a fire inside her that she had never felt before. Ethan sat alone in his office long after everyone had gone home, the only light coming from the glow of his MacBook. He couldn't force himself to leave. Every time he tried, he imagined Sarah somewhere out there, scared, hurt, alone, and the guilt kept him anchored like a weight he couldn't escape. He rubbed his temples, exhaustion pressing against his skull, when Rachel, his communications director, knocked lightly on the door. "I know it's late," she said, stepping in, "but you need to see this." Ethan straightened. "Another article?" "Worse," Rachel replied, placing a printed thread of emails on his desk. "I traced the IP of the anonymous submissions to the gossip sites. It wasn't an internet troll. It wasn't a journalist. It was someone with access to our internal servers. Ethan's stomach dropped. Who? Rachel hesitated only a second before saying the name he already suspected. Olivia Reed. He closed his eyes, jaw clenching so hard the muscles trembled. What did she send? Rachel handed him a highlighted printout fabricated statements claiming Sarah had been unstable, emotionally unpredictable, and possibly having an affair. Lies. Cruel, calculated lies. But what made Ethan's blood run cold wasn't just the text. It was the photo attached. A photo of him and Olivia at a conference months ago, cropped and tinted to appear intimate. Olivia had engineered a narrative to make Sarah look guilty, unfaithful, unhinged. And worst of all, if Sarah had seen any of it, she would think Ethan had moved on. He slammed his fist down on the desk so hard, Rachel flinched. She attacked my wife, he said, voice low, dangerous. While she's pregnant, while she's missing. Rachel nodded, her voice steady. I figured you'd want the full file. Thank you, Ethan said, his voice cracking with fury and regret. I should have seen what Olivia was capable of. Rachel softened. You're trying to fix it now. That matters. He wasn't sure it did. Not yet. Within minutes, Ethan stormed out of the building, the file clutched in his hand. He called Grant, the security chief. I need every detail you can find on Olivia's communications. Emails, texts, burner accounts, everything. Grant cleared his throat. Sir, you might want to sit down for this. We already started digging, and it's worse. Ethan's pulse spiked. How much worse? Olivia tried to contact 3 tabloids today with new material. Claims Sarah left you for another man. Ethan swore under his breath. She's trying to destroy her. Oh, and one more thing, Grant added grimly. The timestamp of the photo used in the main article, it wasn't from last week. It was from an event 6 months ago, entirely manipulated. Ethan closed his eyes, horror settling like ice in his chest. If Sarah had seen that photo, if she believed he and Olivia were together now, he couldn't finish the thought. We need to stop the story, Ethan said. Issue a correction, a full statement. Rachel shook her head. Not enough. The public doesn't care about corrections once the damage is done. You need to shut the entire narrative down at the source. Ethan stared at the photo again, rage simmering beneath the surface. Then we start with destroying Olivia's credibility. He spent the next hours assembling a legal team, gathering evidence, documenting Olivia's violations, drafting statements to clear Sarah's name. It wasn't enough not compared to the pain Sarah must be feeling, but it was something. As dawn crept past the skyline, Ethan stepped onto his balcony overlooking Manhattan. The city looked cold, distant, unforgiving. He gripped the railing, breathing hard. Sarah, he whispered into the empty morning. If you can hear me, if you're out there, please don't believe what you saw. Please don't think I stopped loving you. But across the state line, in a small town many miles away, Sarah had already seen the photo. She had already cried. She had already broken. And while Ethan was finally uncovering the truth, he had no idea that his fight to clear her name was already too late to stop the storm raging in her heart. The next morning, Sarah stood in front of the small bathroom mirror at the inn, fingers trembling as she pinned back her hair. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her cheeks pale, but something inside her looked different, harder, clearer, determined. The photo had shattered something deep within her, but in the ruins, she found a spark she hadn't felt in months. It wasn't anger, it wasn't revenge, it was resolve. She had spent her whole marriage shrinking herself, speaking softly, compromising quietly, enduring silently. But now the world was calling her names she didn't deserve. Strangers judged her, headlines mocked her, and worse, her child might one day grow up reading the lies someone else wrote about her. No, she wouldn't allow that. As she placed her hand over her belly, anchoring herself, she whispered, I won't let the world define me. Not anymore. A soft knock sounded. Come in, she said. Helen stepped inside carrying 2 garment bags. Her expression was calm, but there was a glint in her eyes, pride mixed with something protective. I thought it was time, Helen said, setting the bags on the bed. Time for what? Sarah asked softly. For you to stand up. Helen unzipped the first bag. Inside was a simple but elegant maternity dress, deep navy blue, soft fabric that draped gently but beautifully over a rounded belly. It was understated, tasteful, something a woman with dignity and quiet power would wear. Sarah blinked back emotion. Helen, I can't accept this. Yes, you can, Helen replied firmly. You're going to need it. For what? Sarah asked. Helen took a breath. For when you confront the lies. Sarah's knees weakened a little. Confront them? I don't even know where to start. Helen sat beside her on the bed. You don't need fame or connections to clear your name. You need presence, you need truth, and you need courage. She squeezed Sarah's hand. You have all three. Sarah swallowed hard. I'm scared. I know, Helen said softly. But fear isn't the enemy. Silence is. Those words, soft but heavy, settled deep into Sarah's chest. Later that afternoon, Lucas saw Sarah walking toward the cafe, wearing the navy dress, her hair swept back neatly. She looked different, still gentle, still fragile, but somehow luminous. He met her at the door before she even reached for the handle. You look. He hesitated, searching for the right word. Strong. Sarah gave a small, nervous laugh. I don't feel strong. That's what strength looks like, Lucas said quietly, doing something even when you're terrified. He gestured for her to sit at the corner table. So what's next? She took a breath. I want to tell my story. Lucas blinked. Publicly? Eventually, she said. But first for myself. I need to write it out. I need to know who I am again. Lucas nodded with the calm certainty she had come to rely on. I'll help however I can. While she sipped her tea, he placed a notebook and pen in front of her. Start with the truth. The real truth. Not the version Olivia twisted. Sarah opened the notebook, staring at the blank page. Her hand shook slightly before she steadied it. My name is Sarah Ward, she wrote, and I am not broken. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from release. She wrote for an hour, then two, pouring her history, her heartbreak, her fears, and her love for her unborn child onto the pages. Each word stitched a piece of her back together. Each sentence built a small foundation of strength beneath her feet. When she finally closed the notebook, she felt lighter, stronger, more whole. Helen stopped by the cafe that evening. When she saw Sarah sitting tall, notebook in hand, she nodded in approval. Good, she said. You're beginning. Beginning what? Sarah asked. Helen smiled gently. Your comeback. Sarah exhaled, fear and courage tangling in her chest. And she didn't know it yet, but soon, her quiet strength would collide with the glittering chaos of Manhattan, and she would no longer be the woman who left in tears. She would be the woman who returned in power. The night of the annual Ward Technologies Gala arrived with all the glitter and spectacle Manhattan was known for. The ballroom at the Plaza Hotel glowed under towering chandeliers, each crystal shimmering like falling stars. Photographers crowded the red carpet, their flashes bursting like fireworks as luxury cars pulled up in a smooth procession. It was the kind of night designed to dazzle investors, charm board members, and show the world that Ethan Ward's empire was untouchable. At least, that was what Olivia planned to make it look like. She stepped out of her Blacktown car, wearing a deep, red, floor-length gown that hugged her figure and shimmered under the lights. The moment she emerged, the photographers erupted at the sight of her. She lifted her chin with practiced elegance, giving them a soft, mysterious smile. Tonight, she told herself, everything changes. In her mind, she was about to debut as the woman closest to Ethan Ward, the woman he would rely on as he faced the stress from Sarah's disappearance. She imagined the media coverage, the whispers of Ethan's new partner, the speculation that the billionaire had finally moved on. She thought she had rewritten the narrative, thought she had positioned herself at his side, thought her lies would bury Sarah permanently. Inside the ballroom, she floated through clusters of businessmen and socialites like she owned the place. Every compliment she received on her dress, her poise, her presence fed the delusion that she was ascending into the life she believed she deserved. But one thing unsettled her. Ethan wasn't there yet. She asked one of the coordinators, "Has Ethan arrived?" "Not yet," the woman replied curtly. "He called earlier. He'll be here soon." Olivia's smile faltered for half a second before she regained her composure. Fine. He was running late. Probably stressed. Probably needed her calming presence. Tonight, she would shine brightly enough for both of them. Near the stage, a reporter approached her. "Miss Reed, mind answering a question for our live stream?" Olivia tilted her head graciously. "Of course. There have been rumors," the reporter paused dramatically, "that you and Mr. Ward have grown closer during this difficult time for him." Olivia's heartbeat kicked up. This was her moment. She gave a delicate, sympathetic sigh. "Ethan is going through a lot," she began, choosing each word like a weapon hidden in velvet. The reporter's eyebrows lifted. "So would you say you've become important to him?" Olivia's smile widened. "You could say that." Cameras flashed. People turned. Whispers spread like wildfire. Yes, this was the moment she'd waited for. As she stepped away, she imagined Ethan walking in and seeing her glowing under the chandelier light, seeing the woman who had stayed while his fragile wife fled. She imagined him realizing, finally, that she was the future. But upstairs, in a hotel suite that served as a preparation room, Ethan was standing with his legal team, finalizing the removal order that banned Olivia from every company event, property, and communication channel. His face was set in cold determination. He didn't care what she wore. He didn't care how she smiled. He cared only about correcting the damage she caused and finding Sarah. Downstairs, the doors at the far end of the ballroom opened again. Olivia turned quickly, expecting Ethan. It wasn't him. It was Rachel, Ethan's communications director, marching toward her with a look that made the hair on Olivia's neck stand up. "Olivia," Rachel said sharply, "we need to talk." Olivia scoffed. "Not now. I'm busy." Rachel leaned in, voice like a knife. "You shouldn't be here." "What are you talking about?" Olivia laughed nervously. Rachel held up her phone, displaying the legal ban, complete with Ethan's signature. Olivia's heart dropped. "This isn't real." "It's very real," Rachel said. "And when Ethan comes downstairs, he's going to have you escorted out." Olivia's breath hitched. He wouldn't dare. But even as she spoke, the crowd shifted, cameras turned, and a hush rolled over the room. Ethan Ward had arrived, and the thunderstorm on his face was not one Olivia had ever seen before. And she had no idea that someone else, someone far more powerful that night, was only minutes away from stealing the spotlight she thought she owned. The Blacktown car slowed to a stop outside the Plaza Hotel, its headlights cutting through the glittering frenzy of photographers waiting along the red carpet. No one paid attention to the car at first. They were too busy shouting Olivia's name and snapping photos of New York's elite. But then the back door opened, and a hush rippled across the crowd like wind sweeping through tall grass. A woman stepped out slowly, one hand supporting her rounded belly, the other steadying herself against the cool evening air. Sarah Ward. But not the Sarah they remembered. This Sarah wore a deep navy gown that draped elegantly over her pregnant figure, a soft silk that shimmered subtly under the camera lights. Her hair, once kept in simple buns or loose waves, was now swept back into a clean, confident style that exposed her strong cheekbones. She looked softer, yet stronger. Fragile, yet unbroken. A woman who had walked through fire and learned to breathe the smoke. Gasps echoed along the barricades. Photographers froze before recovering all at once. Sarah Ward. Oh my God, is that really her? Where has she been? How does she look this good? The flashes exploded so violently that for a moment, the hotel exterior lit up like daylight. Sarah's heart raced, but she kept walking, posture straight, breath steady. Helen walked just a step behind her, calm and protective, like a guardian guiding her into the lion's den. Inside her clutch, Sarah held the notebook she had filled with truths, her own story. She didn't know if she would use it tonight, but holding it grounded her. When she stepped into the ballroom, the atmosphere shifted immediately. The glittering guests, the investors in tailored suits, the women in shining gowns, they all turned. Conversations stalled, glasses paused midair. For a few heartbeats, the grand ballroom fell completely silent. and Olivia looked like the floor had just vanished beneath her heels. Her red gown, once dazzling, now felt almost desperate compared to the quiet dignity Sarah carried. Olivia's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat, lipstick trembling as she tried to process the impossible. Sarah Ward had returned, and she had returned stronger. Ethan, standing with Rachel and several executives, turned sharply at the collective gasp sweeping across the room. For a moment, he didn't believe what he saw. His eyes widened, chest tightening painfully, as Sarah appeared in the entryway like a vision he'd been chasing for weeks. His breath left him completely. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice cracking. He moved toward her instinctively, but stopped a few feet away, unsure if he had the right to get closer. He could feel her presence like a pulse, steady, warm, real. Sarah met his eyes. For the first time since she left, Ethan could see the calm strength in her face. She wasn't the trembling woman who had disappeared into a stormy night. She wasn't even the heartbroken wife he remembered. She was something else now, something powerful. Olivia pushed through the crowd, panic rising. What is she doing here? She shouldn't be here. Rachel stepped in front of her. "Careful, Olivia. People are watching." "I don't care," Olivia hissed. She left. She abandoned him. She doesn't belong. But her rant died instantly when Sarah turned her head slowly and looked at her. One simple look. No anger, no tears. Just truth cutting through everything Olivia had built on lies. The room watched, spellbound. Ethan finally found his voice. "Sarah, are you all right?" Sarah lifted her chin. "I'm standing," she said softly. "That's enough." Her voice was steady, clear, strong. Olivia Palit. Ethan's eyes filled with relief and regret. The crowd leaned in. The gala, meant to celebrate a corporation, had just shifted into a battlefield, and the woman everyone underestimated had become the center of every spotlight. And as Sarah took another step forward, no one in the room realized she hadn't come to fade into the background, she had come to reveal everything. The ballroom pulsed with tension so thick it felt like a living thing, breathing, tightening, waiting. Every eye stayed fixed on Sarah as she walked further into the light, the soft glow from the chandeliers catching the subtle sheen of her navy gown. Her steps were slow but deliberate, her hand gently supporting her belly. She wasn't here to cause a scene. She wasn't here to beg. She wasn't here to break. She was here to tell the truth. Ethan took a step forward, breath trembling. "Sarah, I've been searching for you every day, every minute." She held his gaze for a long moment. There was no hatred in her eyes, but no softness either. Only clarity. A woman who had seen enough pain to carve a new spine out of survival. "I know," she said quietly. "I saw the headlines." A ripple went through the crowd. Olivia tensed, her fingers curling into her gown until the seams pulled. "Sarah, those were lies," Ethan said, voice cracking. "I had nothing to do with them. I swear to you." "You don't have to swear," Sarah cut in softly. "I already know who sent them." All eyes flicked to Olivia. She froze. For the first time all night, Olivia's confidence crumbled. "Don't look at me," Olivia snapped, voice rising. "This is ridiculous." Rachel stepped forward, calm, steady, prepared. "We have the full file," she said, holding up her phone. "Emails, edited photos, IP addresses." "Olivia, you weren't subtle." A collective gasp echoed through the ballroom. Olivia's face drained completely. "You can't prove anything," she hissed. Rachel swiped her screen and projected it to the nearby display, an internal communications channel showing Olivia's anonymous messages, including the fabricated statement about Sarah's secret lover and emotional instability. The room erupted. Whispers, gasps, phones lifted to record. Olivia's mask shattered. "Ethan, you know why I did this," she cried, stepping toward him. "I was trying to protect you. She abandoned you, pregnant or not. She wasn't strong enough for your world." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You don't get to speak about her," he said, voice sharp enough to cut glass. "She left you," Olivia yelled, desperate now. "I stayed. I supported you. I've been by your side." Sarah stepped closer, her voice calm but firm. "You stood by his side because you wanted status. You wanted the spotlight. And when you didn't get it, you went after me." Olivia opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked around, realizing the room was no longer hers to manipulate. The power she thought she owned evaporated in seconds. Sarah reached into her clutch and pulled out her notebook, the one filled with her handwriting, her truth. She opened it gently. "I left because I couldn't breathe," she said, her voice steady, clear enough to quiet the entire ballroom. "I left because I needed to protect my child from a life filled with headlines, lies, and betrayals." Her voice trembled slightly, but she continued. "I didn't leave to hurt you," she said to Ethan. "I left to save myself." Ethan swallowed hard, tears stinging his eyes. "And I'm the one who should have protected you," he whispered. "I failed you, Sarah." A hush swept the room. Sarah inhaled deeply, steadying herself. "I won't let the world define me by rumors. I won't let anyone decide my story, not anymore." Her gaze shifted to Olivia one final time. "And I won't allow anyone to use my silence as their weapon." Olivia's knees wobbled. She looked small, cornered, exposed, defeated. Security began moving toward her, but Olivia stepped back, shaking her head. "No, no, this isn't how it ends." But it was. Ethan nodded to security. "Escort her out." As Olivia was led through the doors, cameras followed her humiliation, capturing every second of the downfall she had orchestrated for someone else. And Sarah, still standing tall in the center of the ballroom, became the woman everyone watched, everyone admired, everyone underestimated until tonight. What the crowd didn't know was that this was only the beginning of her reclaiming everything she lost and everything she was about to become. For several moments after Olivia was escorted out, the ballroom remained suspended in a stunned, electric silence. Sarah stood beneath the chandelier light like a quiet storm, composed, steady, impossible to ignore. She didn't look triumphant. She didn't look vengeful. She simply looked free, in a way she hadn't been in months. The truth was out. Her voice had returned, and the woman the world thought had run away was standing at the center of Manhattan's most powerful room, unbroken. Slowly, Ethan approached her. His steps were hesitant, almost fearful, as if he were approaching something sacred he wasn't sure he had the right to touch. The closer he got, the more his breath trembled. He had imagined this moment countless times, but never like this, never with her looking so strong, so far beyond the reach of his excuses. "Sarah," he said softly, stopping a safe distance away. "Thank you for coming tonight." She looked at him calmly. "I didn't come for the gala. Or for you." "I know," he said, his voice tight with pain. "You came to defend yourself, and you shouldn't have had to." A beat of silence passed between them, heavy, complicated, filled with everything unsaid. He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry for the lies you saw. I'm sorry for letting Olivia anywhere near our lives. I'm sorry for the nights you cried alone while I chased things that didn't matter." Sarah's expression shifted, not breaking, not softening, just listening. Ethan took a breath, and his voice cracked. "But most of all, I'm sorry for not seeing you, for not seeing how much you were hurting, for not being the man you needed, the husband you deserved." Several people nearby looked away, giving them space. Sarah held her clutch tighter. "I didn't leave to punish you," she said quietly. "I left because I couldn't breathe. Because I didn't recognize the man standing beside me anymore." Ethan nodded slowly. "I know, and I hate that it took losing you to understand how lost I was." He stepped closer, but still kept a respectful distance. "I'll spend the rest of my life proving I can be better whether or not you ever come home." Those words hit her harder than she expected. For months, she had begged silently, painfully for him to see her. Now he finally did. But something deep inside her had changed. She was no longer that invisible woman. "Ethan," she said softly, her eyes shining, "I believe you're sorry. I really do. But sorry doesn't erase what happened." "I know," he whispered. "And sorry doesn't rebuild trust," she added gently. His shoulders fell. "Can it be rebuilt?" Sarah hesitated, not because she didn't know the answer, but because the truth was complicated. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Maybe someday, maybe not." Ethan nodded, swallowing emotion. Whatever you choose, I'll respect it." She looked at him for a long moment. The man in front of her wasn't the cold, distracted husband who had pushed her aside. He looked broken open, raw, humbled, painfully human. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel resentment. She felt acknowledgement. But that didn't erase the past. "I need space," she said gently. "Time. A place where the noise can't drown me." "You deserve that," he replied quietly. "And if you need protection, resources, anything, I'll make sure you have it. No questions asked." Sarah nodded, appreciating the sincerity. Ethan's voice softened. "If nothing else, thank you for giving me a chance to apologize." Her throat tightened. "Thank you for saying it." He stepped back slowly, giving her room, something he should have done months ago. But before he fully retreated, he whispered one final confession. "I love you, Sarah. I always did. I just forgot how to show it." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't fall apart this time. She stood tall. "I hope, someday, we both remember who we were before everything got lost." Ethan nodded, pain and hope mixing in his gaze. And as Sarah turned her face toward the lights of the ballroom, she didn't know that the next person to step forward wouldn't be Ethan, but someone she never expected to see tonight. The moment Ethan stepped back, giving her the space she'd asked for, Sarah felt the air shift. The pressure in the room loosened just slightly, like a tight fist finally unclenching. She exhaled slowly, grounding herself. For weeks, she had been running, unraveling, rebuilding. Tonight she had stood in front of the world, spoken her truth, and watched the lies crumble at her feet. But even with the chaos behind her, she still didn't know what her future looked like. Not with Ethan, not with Manhattan, not with the life she had left behind. She started to move away from the crowd, needing air, needing stillness. As she walked toward a quieter corner of the ballroom, the murmurs around her formed a soft wave of admiration, words like brave, strong, unbelievable. She didn't cling to them, but she let them land gently. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. At the edge of the room, she paused and took a deep breath. Then she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Sarah." She turned, startled. Lucas. He stood a few feet away, wearing a simple dark suit that somehow made him look both handsome and quietly confident. His hair was slightly damp, his breath still uneven from rushing. He looked entirely out of place among the diamonds and tuxedos, but completely unfazed by it. What are you doing here?" she whispered. "I drove," he said, catching his breath. "Helen called me. She was worried you'd need someone tonight." Sarah blinked, emotion rising unexpectedly. "You didn't have to come all this way." "I know." His voice softened. "But you shouldn't have to stand alone in a room full of people who once overlooked you." Something warm, unexpected, and steady bloomed in her chest. Lucas stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "Are you all right?" She nodded slowly. "I think I'm finding my way." He gave a small smile. "You did more than that tonight." She looked down at her belly instinctively. "I needed to protect my child, that's all." Lucas shook his head gently. "No, you protected yourself too. That matters just as much." His words wrapped around her like a blanket. She didn't realize how desperately she had needed someone to acknowledge that truth. A few guests glanced their way, whispering. But Lucas didn't seem to care. He simply stood there, steady, grounded, present in a way that didn't demand anything from her. "I don't know what comes next," Sarah admitted softly. "You don't have to." Lucas's voice was warm but firm. "You just need to choose what's healthiest for you, not what looks good, not what anyone expects." Sarah's eyes stung. "I spent so many years making myself smaller." "Not anymore," Lucas said. "You've already stepped out of that shadow." The room around them faded into a blur, the sparkling gowns, the chandeliers, the curious eyes. In this moment, she wasn't the billionaire's wife. She wasn't the pregnant woman who disappeared. She was simply Sarah, and Lucas saw her. Truly saw her. Ethan watched from across the ballroom, his chest tightening. He didn't approach. He didn't interrupt. He understood something in that moment painfully, quietly, that Sarah was no longer standing behind him. She was standing on her own. Lucas gently touched her hand. If you want to leave, I'll walk with you. If you want to stay, I'll be nearby. Whatever you choose, I'm here." Sarah inhaled, steadying herself. She looked around the ballroom one last time, the life she had nearly drowned in. The life that had once felt glamorous, then suffocating. Finally, she turned back to Lucas. "I want to go," she said softly. "I want to go somewhere calm." He nodded. "Then let's go." They walked toward the exit together, slowly, steadily, side by side. And though nothing romantic passed between them, something undeniably new began forming. Something gentle, something healing, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. And as the doors closed behind her, Sarah didn't realize yet that leaving this gala wasn't an ending. It was the first true step into a life she finally chose for herself. The cold night air outside the plaza wrapped around Sarah like a quiet whisper, a stark contrast to the glittering storm she had just stepped out of. The city lights shimmered across the wet pavement, and for the first time in a long time, Manhattan didn't feel suffocating. It felt distant, like a chapter she had finally closed. Lucas walked just a step beside her, not touching her, not hovering, simply present. And that presence alone felt like the safest place she'd known in months. "You okay?" he asked softly. Sarah nodded. "More than okay. I feel lighter." They walked towards Central Park, the quiet edge of it glowing under lampposts. Sarah paused at the entrance, staring at the bare branches swaying gently in the night breeze. "I used to come here with Ethan," she admitted quietly. Lucas didn't interrupt. He let her speak, let her release the last pieces of the past still clinging to her. "He wasn't always distant," she continued. "He was kind. Gentle. The kind of man who held my hand like it meant something." Lucas nodded. "Sometimes people lose themselves. Doesn't make them evil, just lost." She looked at him with tired but honest eyes. "Do you think he loved me?" "I think," Lucas said, "he loved the woman you were, but he couldn't love her the way she needed. And you," he smiled softly, "you became someone stronger." Sarah swallowed the lump rising in her throat. She didn't want bitterness. She didn't want revenge. She wanted understanding, closure, peace. They continued walking until they reached a quiet bench overlooking the reservoir. Sarah sat slowly, her hands instinctively resting on her belly. The baby kicked lightly, almost as if responding to the calm that had finally replaced the chaos. Lucas sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "You know," he said gently, "you don't owe anyone a decision right now. Not Ethan. Not the world. Not even me." She smiled softly. "I know. What do you want?" he asked. It was a simple question, but it struck her deeply because no one had asked her that in years. Not what she should do. Not what was expected. Just what she wanted. "I want peace," she whispered. "I want a home where my child doesn't hear yelling or see their mother crying in the kitchen while pretending to be fine. I want love, but the gentle kind. The steady kind. And you will have that," Lucas said. "You're already walking toward it." Sarah took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "I'm not ready for anything romantic," she said honestly. "I know," Lucas replied with a warm, understanding smile. "And that's okay. I'm not asking for anything, just offering a friend who cares." Those words wrapped around her like a soft blanket. She leaned back on the bench, looking at the stars peeking through the New York haze. The next morning, she met Ethan privately in a small hotel lounge. He looked exhausted but calmer, like a man who had accepted the consequences of his mistakes. "I won't fight you," Ethan said gently. "Whatever you choose, I'll respect it. And I'll support you and the baby in every way you allow." Sarah nodded. There were no tears this time, no pleading, no shouting. Just truth. "I need a life separate from all of this," she said softly. "For now, that means distance." Ethan's eyes glistened with pain, but he nodded. "You deserve happiness. And I hope someday you find it, even if it's not with me." She squeezed his hand, not as a wife returning, but as a woman saying goodbye with dignity. When she walked out of the hotel, Lucas was waiting by the curb with 2 cups of warm herbal tea, one for her, one for him. He offered it with a small smile. "Ready to go home?" he asked. Sarah looked up at the brightening sky, the city waking beneath it, and felt her heart finally exhale. "Yes," she said, "I'm ready." As they drove away toward Pennsylvania, toward peace, toward a future she chose for herself, Sarah rested her hand on her belly and smiled. Her life wasn't ending. It was beginning. And for the first time, she wasn't walking into it alone, she was walking into it free. So that's the end of our story. And if you're still here with me right now, my friend, it means something inside this journey touched you in a very real way. Maybe it reminded you of your own strength, or maybe of a moment when you had to choose yourself, even when your heart was breaking. What Sarah learned is something we all forget. Healing doesn't come from running back to what hurt us. It comes from standing up for our worth. The Stoics said it simply, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Marcus Aurelius wrote that, and it's true. We can't control who betrays us, who walks away, or who misunderstands us. But we can control how we rise after. This story is a reminder that dignity is quiet, courage is gentle, and choosing peace is not weakness, it's wisdom. And if you're listening now, maybe you're stronger than you give yourself credit for. If this touched your heart even a little, give it a like. Share it with someone who needs hope. And subscribe so you don't miss the next journey we walk together. Because you matter. Your story matters. And you deserve to choose a life that brings you peace.